But I want to just change gears here a little bit and just discuss some of the things that have been vexing on my mind and heart, and particularly in our community. I mean, we can go back and forth over and over about the banking system and Jesse Jackson and racism, and we all know that racism is promoted, is produced, we know that, but to say that a black leader or is promoting it is a bit more than I can handle. If that's the case, then Huey P. Newton, Malcolm X, Dr. King, and all of those promoted racism, in which we know that they were just responders to racism. If you saw hate in those people, it was the hate that hate produced. And this country here was produced, you know, you can't make a chicken have a duck egg, you know that. The reproductive organs are totally different. So if you're going to continue to have racism, then you're going to have the same reproductive organs. But if you want to stamp out racism, you got to change the whole reproductive organs of that chicken and give it the reproductive organs of a duck. Then you can get something done. And as far as what you were saying about being bloody to make change, well, what I learned about our people, and it's not just here, but it's local, it's national, that we have blood to bleed for everybody else's cause but our own. When our young black men are around getting beat down and shot, we ain't got no blood. But then we're over in North Korea ready to fight them, over in Pakistan ready to fight them, and then as bloody as we get with each other. We're violent when it comes to us fighting each other. But when it comes to fighting for just so-called civil rights here, nobody got no blood, nobody want to stand up, everybody throwing rocks and hiding their hand. And like Brother Hackley said earlier, they're somewhere hiding behind a pole because they don't want to speak, because they're afraid something, the crumbs that's falling from the table are going to be taken. Well, it's rough out here, yeah, and it's something to contend with, but there's a lot of people that didn't have this opportunity to stand and do what we're doing. And if they did, we know the consequences that they paid. But I had a few issues on my heart, as I said earlier, but I'm going to try to be quick and to the point. But one thing starting off that is just vexed on my mind and my heart is what's been going on in the city here as far as our leadership. There's been some serious transgressions made. I want to talk about the black church in our communities. And we know, I don't have to give you names of these churches and ministers and things like that where these incidences has been occurring. But let me let you know that for 100 years or more, the so-called Negro church or the black church has been controlled by the black man, by that Negro minister or that black community or the board. And they had no problem. They had total, complete, 100% autonomy over the control over that church. As a matter of fact, that's the only thing that the black man had total 100% autonomy over was the church. Now, what hurts me and what embarrasses me is for these churches to have to go downtown and call the political system or someone from that system to come and help them handle their own business in a church where black ministers has been doing it for over 100 years. It's embarrassing me, and it should be embarrassing to you to have to see them just go to this extreme, throwing the ministers out, filing charges against the ministers and things of this nature. Back in the day, this didn't happen. And see, what this does is it has a snowball effect. And the effect is this. Our young, they are out there and they are so alienated. And some of the things that they are doing is just simply outrageous. How do we call them back into the church? How do we say, hey, I want you to come and listen to Reverend Jones or Reverend Johnson, just using hypothetical names. How do I get you to do that? And the first thing they're going to say to you is, they need to get their stuff together. They're not handling their business. They got to go downtown. Look at they calling the police coming into churches and this, that, and the other. You want me to be a part of that? Well, what do you say? I don't have no recourse. I don't have any comeback because I myself feel the same way. I want to go. I'd like to fellowship in a church where I know God exists. If you bring in police into a church and if you're in there bickering about this dollar and that dollar and where it's going and who's doing what with it, then God can't exist in there. And it's so bad here in our community where if you're not affiliated with the church and you mess around and you succumb or you pass away, you go to some of these churches and Reverend Porkchop gonna tell you you can't lay there because you don't belong to his church. Now, if this is a church of God and God dwells there, how is he to tell this family, this poor family who's bereaved enough and going through enough that his remains can't lay in this church simply because he didn't belong there? That right there, and it's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment to me, and it's an embarrassment. It should be an embarrassment to you, all of you. And just imagine, and if you don't think that they are, I got news for you. Imagine what they're saying downtown about us. They can't do this without us. They can't do that without us. They're like they had the minds of little children. And this has been some of the things that they say all the time, and that's why it's just extremely important that when you're in a position of authority that you represent, unfortunately, you represent all of us. You have to be careful out there what you do. Now, another thing here is it's incumbent upon me, having been in the policing for some years to speak on police relations. Now, I know this is a very, very touchy subject, but it's something that needs to be said. But first of all, let me say, I'm not a subscriber to anyone who wants to deal drugs. I'm not a subscriber to anyone who wants to break the law, this, that, and the other. But when the police start to act like the very thing that they call themselves trying to stamp out, and that's gang members, gangs, then you lose the black community. You lose it. It creates despotism, and when it creates this despotism, the community's going to turn on you. And the new police chief that we have, he's not going to get any compliance from the black community, not until he sits all of his officers down, give them some cultural diversity training. See, the problem in our black community is not so much as, well, it is a problem with the black on black crime. But when you have officers coming into the community that comes from Poe, Indiana, from Monroe, Indiana, from all this where you have no black constituency, then they don't have any idea of how to deal with young black men. And when you're out here, I can remember, I can count on one hand, the incidences that I've had, and a lot of the things that occurred out there is contingent on how you deal with people. Learning how to talk to people. The first thing one of these officers, they come in our community and they make a stop on one of these young men, the first thing they want to tell them is shut up, or this, that, and the other. Get on the ground, lay on the ground. Well, a lot of that is not necessary. When you're getting compliance from the individual, there's no reason to throw him on the ground, put your foot on his neck, and things of this nature. Now, there are standard operating procedures, SOPs, that govern the behavior of each and every one of those city officers down there. But are they being promoted? You would think that you would make sure that they had cultural diversity and training. And let me say, one of the reasons that I chose the Indiana State Police is because, one, they train you well. They hardly have people that die on the job because they train you very well. And two, they didn't play that you're going to be rude or you're going to talk to someone this or that way. If you got reported, you were in that office on the carpet and you had to explain what occurred. And that I appreciated and respected. And I don't see this happening with the city police department. The internal affairs department needs to be revamped. It does. You file a formal complaint with them and it goes to that office and you never hear a thing. You don't know if it's got investigated. You don't know. That has been my experience. And with these things going on with us in the black community, we're not going to cooperate. And yes, the way these young men are acting as far as these gangs, they need to be stamped out. But to allow your officers to violate the standard operating procedures of the city of Fort Wayne Police Department, the United States constitutional laws, that can't happen. You can't happen because if it does, you will not get any compliance from the community, and that's the ultimate goal. Believe me, every crime that's committed out there, now I know I ain't telling y'all nothing you don't know. Every crime that's committed out there, somebody knows who did it. Somebody knows who did it, or a whole bunch of somebodies. But why? Why should they tell one gang on another gang? And this is the attitude that they got. They feel like it's us against them. Now I can remember some 20, 25 years ago when city officers was walking the block. They knew who lived at that house, they knew who lived at that house, and they knew who got drunk and went staggering down the street. And you know, they come by, ride their bikes, and you hear them say, "Tommy, go home. You done had a little bit too much to drink. Go on home, Tommy." You don't see that anymore. First thing they do, run up on him, throw him down, cuff him, put their foot on his neck, take him to jail for public intoxication. Where? What? And then this gets back into the community. Where does it help? It does not help. Well, there's a protocol that you know that each city officer, not just city, state, county, you can go throughout this nation, the United States Constitution, and it governs the action. For example, if you're getting stopped, the first thing that the officer has to establish is reasonable suspicion. Now, reasonable suspicion to make a stop on you is, for example, I see you're driving down the road there and you go left to center and cross that center line. That's reasonable suspicion to stop you. Okay? You don't use your turn signal. That's reasonable suspicion to stop you. Now, what we are arguing about and what I've been hearing in the community so much is the officers not building reasonable suspicion. Stopping you just profiling. Because they see a black face, they see you bumping your head to your music, you may have a passenger in your car, they see that, oh, possible drugs, or possible this, or he may be drunk. Well, no, that's not probable cause, it's not reasonable suspicion, it's unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional. Now let's say hypothetically that they do have the reasonable suspicion and they stop you. Okay, you getting out of your car, or they say, well, step out of your car. Sometimes they ask that. Okay, you get out of your car. There's a U.S. constitutional precedent, Terry versus Ohio. Terry versus Ohio was placed there for the safety of the officers. And what Terry versus Ohio says, once reasonable suspicion is established, your vehicle is stopped, that officer can, per authority, Terry versus Ohio, can pat you down, pat you, frisk you. Now, if he feels something that feels like the frame of a weapon, of a gun, okay, yeah, he can go in your pocket and get it. But Terry versus Ohio is just a pat down frisk. Can he go in your pockets? No. Does reasonable suspicion allow him to search your vehicle? No. And this is what I'm seeing. I'm getting so sick and tired of riding down the street and seeing young boys laid out on the ground and officers ransacking the car. Well, a lot of times they find nothing, and you see them right up the road a little later, they didn't find anything and just harass these young kids and stop them for nothing. Well, you have to have probable cause. Probable cause to make a stop. Now, to search after the stop. Probable cause is just enough to build it where the officer believes that a crime has been committed or is about to be committed. And under those auspices, he can't stop the vehicle.